Well, after all that insane pre-work and preparation, and then for it to suddenly crap at the last second, we made it work. More people have walked on the moon that have seen some of the places today's guests have explored right here on Earth. Jill Heinerth is Canadian cave diver, underwater explorer, author, filmmaker. Way more important to this is she's my friend Debbie Saviano's friend. She's the first person in history to listen to how much of this sounds like it's absolutely not real. The first person in history to dive inside an Antarctic iceberg. She's been doing this kind of work ever since most people can't even picture, in places that people will never go. And if you haven't read her book, Into the Planet, or watched Diving into the Darkness yet, this conversation is going to make you want to do both by the time we are done. So we have so much to cover.
Hi, everyone. Tim Kitzrow from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, welcoming you to The Backpack Show. Your hosts, Chris Brogan, Kerry Gorgone, Boom Shakalaka.
Backpack Show. I haven't done an intro in so long that when you asked me who I was looking at nobody. Look, our guest has me a bit shook. I've never said that in the history of the show, but Jill is a very prepared person, Kerry.
We were backstage in the green room. I always tell people that's like the most fun experiences before we go live, and this was no exception. So Jill hits us with, "Hey, if I've got some relevant media, do you want me to show it?" And it shows behind her. Not since we had Sam, he had like demos for medical doctors studying how to do procedures. Not since then have we had someone this prepared. So we should probably get them out here.
I'm going to drag Jill in. Like I said, she's our friend, Debbie Saviano's friend. Jill Heinerth, welcome to the show. And am I pronouncing it right? Because I forgot to even ask you that question. It's Heinerth.
Yeah, you're good. Heinerth.
And so Joanne's here. That's my dad, Steve Brogan. My first note that I saw, like I said, this all seems like and Debbie's here. This seems like shenanigans. You sold everything. You left office life and became a cave diver. That is right there already crazy town. Like, how did that? You're like, you know what? I don't want to process people's insurance claims or whatever it is. Go dive in a cave.
Yeah,
I do know people who have said they'd rather walk into the ocean than do one more day in the office.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I had an advertising company, so a creative business, and I loved the creative process, but I knew I wasn't going to survive, living my life working indoors. I'm too much of an outdoor gal, and I was already teaching scuba nights and weekends, and I went, I can be creative, but I need to do it underwater.
So how did that go over? Like, how do you rearrange your whole life when you're just like, hey, in my notice, give you a couple weeks, and then I'm going to go dive into some caves?
Yeah, I mean, I sold everything, sold my business, sold all my belongings. But yeah, it kind of went over like a lead balloon in my family. It's like, huh? You're going to do what? That's a job? So I think my family figured I was going to be back in short term, like when I needed to refill the bank account. But I managed to put together a pretty cool career.
I thought Chloe was on the way from Scotland to the U.S., so I didn't expect to see her today.
We thought she'd be in flight. Cave diving, so there's a lot of ways so diving, period, is tricky. Cave diving is tricky. How do you go, nah, this is kind of boring. I've already figured out how to take in oxygen. I think I'll go nuts. Or was it, I need to see what's in this cave? Like, chicken and egg that for me. How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up watching the Apollo missions, and I'm sure anyone that's watched the Artemis missions recently is kind of excited about space. But for me as a kid, it made me pretty excited about exploration, because that was a time when we all watched the same TV broadcast, because we only had 2 television channels anyway, right? But that meant that something like the Apollo missions were just so much a part of everybody's daily conversations. And so, I talked to my mom about being an astronaut, and she told me, well, honey, we don't have a Canadian space program, and heck, there are no girl astronauts anyway. So always in the back of my head was, well, how can I explore? How can I go to places that nobody's ever been before? And diving and then subsequently cave diving became that vehicle for me. And I know it's a little abstract to people. Like if you dive, you're probably diving with a single tank on your back and dropping down in the water. And anytime you want to come up, you just swim to the surface. But for me, I'm going down and then into these passageways with an overhead environment. And we have to take a lot of extra equipment to be safe and to give us a backup, because there is no mission control to call for help. So we're on our own in that black environment, dealing with whatever comes our way.
There's so many questions. One of the notes that really kind of shook me. I mean, there's so many. We want to talk so many highs, but there's a pretty tough low in here. Like you've lost a lot of people who are doing this same thing. So when you're saying it's dangerous, we all in our head hear the words as dangerous, and I think we throw it out. It's either this is not for me, I'm not even going to think about it, so it just jettisons from our brain cavity, or we think it's dangerous, but we think, but not me. You have experienced a lot of loss. Every document said a lot of it. How along the way, like you've all opted to be here. It's all a calculated risk and all that. How along the way do you process that? Like what's the math and the mechanics, and what are those calls like to mom?
Yeah. I've lost over 100 friends, well over 100 friends to cave diving, technical diving accidents. And yeah, it is hard to process. And sure, my husband is just like freaks out every time, especially when he knows somebody. But I never want any of those losses to be in vain. Like I take risks because of the data that I'm bringing back to the world. I take risks to communicate about climate change and water issues, and exploration and discovery. So for me, there's a reason to take that risk and mitigate as much as I can. But still, bad things can happen to good people, and we have to bear that in mind. So I just try to carry the lessons with me. I mean, those friends didn't, enter the cave that day intending to die. They had a mission and a purpose for what they did. And so I'll honor that as I continue my work as safely as I possibly can.
So you mentioned the data you bring back and how it motivates you. And I've heard you say that we know more about space than we know about our own oceans. Can that possibly be true? Because we're right here. How is that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to put up some little visuals here behind me. Like caves, I like to think of as museums of natural history. Yeah, they're dangerous and they're dark, like completely dark, no light whatsoever. But they contain so much information for us to explore. Like we can learn about Earth's past climate from paleoclimatologists that get that evidence from the rocks. We can learn about ancient civilizations that have left behind cultural remains and assets in these places that they think of as portals to another world. And we can learn about unique biology that lives in the blackness of these spaces, like animals that never see the light of day, have no eyes, no pigment, and yet can offer information about longevity, evolution, and survival, and even bioactive compounds that we might use for new medicines and other great discoveries. So caves are a remarkable place that we know very little about. All the funding goes to space or to, charismatic megafauna like studying whales and sharks and everything else, but not a lot of funding goes into looking at our inner Earth environments, and they're really worthy of exploration.
Jill, I'm freaking out. Some of those spaces are really, really small.
Some are small, but I mean, some are as big as the room that you're sitting in or even the building that you're sitting in. So there are times when big is even scarier because I can't see the walls or the floor or the ceiling for reference. It's like floating in space.
I am still, I was shallow breathing the whole absolute time watching that, I was just thinking, I'm a big round person. Like any one of those would just take me right out, and I'd be stuck there for the last 30 seconds, and I'd be 104 person. But I'm stuck on the part you just said about it's not as charismatic as megafauna. And I've heard this a lot from different people with different causes and research needs and science needs. It is that game. That game is, if something is, a panda's attractive, so we'll give pandas money. There's like, whales are big, and we know we've heard Save the Whales for 5 decades. No one says caves are important. How on the earth do you get, and I know they are, but I'm saying you and 2 other friends of yours have a bumper sticker that say caves are important. Like what, how do we bring this, and maybe that's what gets you to the RCGS, but how do you get there?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we look at beautiful whales and sharks and think, oh my gosh, these are so important to protect and conserve. But in a way, that's the wrong end of the food chain to be protecting, right? So like, I love whales, don't get me wrong, but we could probably live in a world without whales, but we can't live in a world without tiny little diatoms and microalgae that create the oxygen that we breathe and serve as the bottom of the food chain. And then if you go into caves, we have these crazy animals that have no eyes, no pigment, but can live a really long time. In fact, many of these animals have like predated the extinction of the dinosaurs. Like this one has not changed in over 65 million years. And yet it has venomous fangs and pincers and can turn its prey in its guts into jello and then suck the life out of it over time. Like this could be the deadliest animal on the planet if it was
gross.
Yeah. But, these are beautiful little things that swim through the cave as little predators. And some of the like survival mechanisms for these animals represent incredible features, like features that also contain bioactive compounds that may be the next answer to cancer or the next antibiotic. Like some of the most important medicines of recent years have come from filter feeding deep sea organisms and cave organisms, like resveratrol for breast cancer, COVID drugs, AZT for AIDS. So the life within caves can really teach us a lot, and we're just scratching the surface in terms of even identifying what lives there right now.
So what are the world's hidden water sources and systems telling us that people don't like hearing?
Well, I mean, they're telling us that we're all connected. Think about COVID, when all the virus in the world could have been held in my hands, and yet it affected everyone on the planet. But we somehow missed that lesson. And the lesson is true for water as well. Like whatever we do on the surface of the earth is going to be returned to us to drink. So anything applied to the surface of the earth soaks into the ground and reaches underground aquifers and moving waterways through the planet that connect us all. So if we can't protect our water resources everywhere, then we're going to be doomed.
I am so blown away. I love every bit of this conversation. I did hear something though. I heard that you have an interesting way of using the word. Joanne says, wow, so many potential resources in the depths in the dark. You use the word failure in a different way. And I'm fascinated by this because I also see failure differently. I'd love to hear your take.
Yeah, failure is generally a negative term in the English language. But to me, like, we have to accept failure as a part of exploration. Edison didn't, invent the light bulb the first time around. There were a bunch of failures and reiterations and everything else. So I think of failure as discovery learning. And in the big picture of your own life, like everything good, bad, ugly, terrible that you've done created the sum total of who you are today. And so we must accept those road bumps and failures as, strategic intelligence, to learn and move forward. And if we aren't willing to learn and move forward, discover and explore, we're kind of doomed as a species, like we have to step into that darkness.
It scares most people to death, though, the idea of failure. Actually, you combine a bunch of things that people are scared of, like small spaces
Yeah.
and deep,
Yeah.
diving into caves, and also public speaking, which you do a lot.
Yes.
And yet you've managed this perfect storm of terrifying things. What keeps you going? What motivates you?
I pinch myself every day. I'm doing work that feels important to me, but it also feels important to share as a science communicator with the world. Like, and that's all I'm really asking for in life. That's all really most of us are asking for in life. It's just some sort of a mission that makes us feel good about the things that we do every day. Just reaching one person, like through a broadcast like this, is powerful. It's great life's work.
Was it more difficult, do you think, to make your way in this career as a woman?
Oh, no question. Yes. And yet, like, I've always just aspired to be the best person that I could be. Like, I don't want to be regarded as like the best woman this or the first female that kind of thing. It's like I just want to do my best to be a part of the team, work my butt off. But there were a lot of times I was the only girl on the boat.
It is crazy though, because when you list all of your crazy accomplishments. First person in history to dive inside Antarctica's B-15 iceberg. Led the team that discovered a Mayan civilization remains underwater in a system in Mexico. Confirmed and photographed the lost World War II bomber at the bottom of Gander Lake, Newfoundland.
Yeah.
You've done this all, and whether or not you want, you definitely don't want the tag ever of first woman, first female, first whatever. But that's quite the glass ceiling. So I'm just fascinated. The scuffles must have been interesting. Or do you just finally, after some amount of, when is enough? When did they go, that's Jill, and you're back to just being you?
Yeah, I mean, for people that suffer from any bias, like gender bias being one of them, some of it's intentional and some of it's unintentional. So there's some things that are just sort of baked into society and the way we do things, right? And I've had people kind of gaze past me to the next qualified man because they don't picture a woman explorer or a woman underwater cinematographer. They just assume that the guy standing beside me is that person. And so it's about breaking down, barriers and representing and showing, other women what an explorer looks like. Like I remember seeing a kid that brought home homework to their parent, and the homework had been marked wrong. And it was a young kid, and they were asked to write the name of a person who worked at a hospital, and the only two letters filled in the word were U and R. And the child wrote surgeon for the woman that worked in the hospital. And the teacher marked it wrong and said, no, nurse was the answer. It's like, So some of it's just kind of baked into society, but yeah, we've got to kick down those glass ceilings and just, show other women what is possible, because there's nothing that's impossible if you work hard. Yeah.
Well, Chris has neglected to thank either of our sponsors, so I guess we better get around to that.
Definitely.
All right, sure, fine, hang on. Chloe, who happens to be airbound, evidently, is here's her Notion starter kit. Chloe is doing something really cool to help organize businesses and make them make more sense, and take a lot of their kind of jumbled mess of operations, lead generation, and pipeline, and that sort of thing, and putting it all in one wonderful place. She uses the tool Notion. I think Chloe could do this with like a paper bag and still win, but you can't believe what you can get here. You can get a really cool starter pack if you go to businessops.co/backpack. And I think I'll also do Fazia right now because we're here, and I'll probably forget it if we don't. Fazia Burke has been a book promoter and helper to friends who have published in many, many ways. But she's also showing people how to use AI for this and many other reasons to her author and thought leader friends. So you can go to faziaburke.substack.com and connect up. I also wanted to make sure that I shouted out Mohan from Nepal. Oops, I got to pull that down. Mohan from Nepal. And I also saw Joanne's thing just come in that says, my husband just had a minor surgical procedure from a woman yesterday. So there you go. There's a surgeon and not just a nurse.
I believe you mean lady surgeon.
Lady cops, lady surgeons. I noticed amongst your very, very many things, you did a little work with Jim Cameron, and he's another voice out there going cuckoo about this and keeps dragging us into theaters to watch giant space whales crush up boats.
Yeah.
How was it? And I imagine he was a real sweetheart in person, but maybe not. Maybe he's a jerk face.
No, he's amazing. He is one of the hardest working people you could ever meet. And yeah, I had the opportunity to take him on his very first cave dives. There he is there. And we were working on a pitch trailer for a movie called Sanctum. That was the one that came right before the Avatar series, when he was sort of working through the technology of the cameras. But if you ever work with James Cameron, he is absolutely the hardest worker on the planet. I have a picture of him somewhere of he and I standing in waist deep water with our full face masks up on our heads, and we're eating pizza because someone's just pitched us a slice of pizza so we don't have to get out of the water.
Okay, look, I'm sorry. When Kerry and I make these, there is no plan. If there's any sense of structure, it's 100% Kerry, 100%. But there's never like, no matter what order she wants me to talk in, there is no plan. I'm like, blah, 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 Jim Cameron. And you're like, dude, here's some pictures of Jim Cameron. You do this so often. Where are you doing this? Like, but when you're not talking to us goofballs, who are you talking to that you've got this media thing just nailed?
Yeah, well, I'm up near Ottawa, Canada, in a small town, and this is my office. And during COVID, when all of my work like vaporized in an instant, I kind of set up my office as a nice little broadcasting studio. And in the first year of COVID, I did 242 broadcasts to homeschoolers and school groups, just to reach out to the world.
That's amazing. Now, if somebody had told me that there was a job where I could spend all day in the water and I could go up to the edge and someone would toss me pizza, I would have done it, Jill.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the documentary, Diving into the Darkness.
Yeah. It's a documentary. It's my life story, as told by a Australian filmmaker, Naze Bagai, director, and I provided him with all of my archives, and then we went around the world, reenacting some of the critical elements that we didn't have captured on film, and it's a beautiful film. I'm really proud of it. Like, it's always scary to kind of entrust your life story to someone, but Naze Bagai did just an amazing job. And
I love it. You think that's scary, like doing the diving, less so, but trusting him to tell your story about it.
Yeah. I mean, you want it to be right. You don't want it to be over sensationalized, but yeah.
Well, when I was watching the footage, that's kind of what I was wondering is, to your point about trusting someone with your story like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's what counts as they need to try to tell something sensational because they need to drag eyes through a certain amount of time, and that's what they're thinking in their head is, how do I make this have lots more sparks? But I watched this is going to be such a weird segue or connection. I watched this documentary about the history of pinball games and how this very one experience in New York City like changed the future of pinball games, because they had lumped pinball games in with gambling. They considered it a form of gambling, and so they were illegal. And there was sort of this like weird gray area, strangely enough, in they could be in like peep show places in New York City. So they were very seedy, I guess, is all I'm going at there. But the guy who this story was about, there's this dramatization coming, but they keep cracking the fourth wall and saying, well, that's not how that really happened. They made it this like sort of romance thing. And he kept going, well, that kind of happened that way, but it wasn't like that. That's how they got around that. So I guess what I'm trying to pull that in for color-wise is you weren't making something like that. You weren't breaking the fourth wall, so you had to trust this story to end that way. How was the back and forth on the narrative reality versus...
And this question comes from inside the big yard at Folsom County Prison.
It was a really great collaborative process with Naze. So we were doing the reenactment shoots around the world while he was already actively in the editing process. And so we were working together on that part. And when you tell a story, you can tell it linear, like I was born here, I died here, um, or you can do non-linear storytelling that's much more interesting to me. So we threw a lot of editing on the floor, and ultimately it took like 14 months to edit the piece. Like, it's a lot. And even, for the sound design and the original score and everything else, like we hired the sound editor from The Mandalorian to do the final sweetening of the edit. So it's a really long process, but I was involved every step of the way, and that's why I'm happy with the result, because it feels quite authentic. Yeah.
Chris has been fangirling, so he hasn't even gotten to a bunch of the stuff we wanted to get to, but I know he wanted to talk about the RCGS. Can we talk? Chris, do you have specific questions or?
Well, so I think it might currently be their first ever entrepreneur in residence. Like, how did that come about? I mean, I think of that as a sort of stuffy organization. It's founded in 1929. They have a certain way about them. How did you bring them to this new world?
Yeah, it's 10 years ago. They called me up and said, we'd like you to be our very first explorer in residence, because National Geographic has explorers in residence, so we want some too. and it's a huge honor for me, to represent my nation as an explorer, make Canada better known to Canadians and the rest of the world. And so I've really enjoyed that opportunity. I was just recently asked to become sort of the honorary vice president now of the society, which is a beautiful thing. So they've sort of promoted me to my next lot in life.
That's amazing. Now I have to think from there, you get more people to come and throw you pizza in the water. Like, maybe you have a dedicated person whose job it is to throw you.
No, it's a wonderful organization. The College of Fellows are remarkable explorers in every right, from astronauts to geologists and field biologists living their life in the north or elsewhere. So when we all get together, we just geek out on exploration and scientific discovery, and it's a great organization to be part of.
Our friends are marketers.
Yeah, we think it's cool what you do because we're just so mind blown by all this. But I do imagine that there's those people gathered around a bunch of old maps and globes conversations. And
sure. Yeah.
I have to imagine there's a little bit of that of what's traditional or not. But I mean, what an interesting, if not you, and if not the kind of really important work you get, otherwise you get the kind of news stories that came out of that unfortunate iceberg in Conception Bay, let's say. So, there's a much better path to take. I'm just going to leave that, because if people don't know, then they don't have to know. Jill, I do have to, we have to wrap the show. I cannot, I'm so sad. There's so many other things I want to ask you, but I guess that's probably the best way to do it. There is couple things we have to do. One of them I almost forgot to do.
Oh, and here's our person of the day. Kaboom!
Can there be any other choice?
I don't know who you're going to choose. I think you're going to probably choose Debbie Saviano because it's her guest. Otherwise, I was going to say, the only second choice might have been Joanne, because she asked so many things, but it's Debbie's friend, so we'll give it to her. Debbie, your person of the day, that entitles you to one free apple. Just go into any old store, grab the apple, run like heck, eat it. You don't have to wash it. It's fine.
Steal it, then wash it and cook it.
Okay. And now we've asked every single guest that's ever been on here, people as prestigious as you, like Butterscotch, the world's first beatbox champion, Sir Mix-a-Lot, who sang "Baby Got Back." We asked them the same question, which is, what goes in your backpack? It could be something physical. It could be something metaphorical. Holy sweet Jesus, well, Jill, what's that?
That's what goes in my backpack.
Usually prepared with graphics.
Just a few things, but truly, like, I always have in my backpack 3 things: a headlamp, a life straw, and a titanium spork.
A titanium spork. Yeah. Do you get that off Amazon? Like, what's the story?
Oh, you can. It's like super lightweight, and then you always have your own utensils. You don't have to use plastic ones that aren't great for the planet. The life straw, so you can filter water anywhere. Yeah. And a headlamp, because that's handy wherever you go around the world.
So because you're you and you've had such a cool background, I feel like we have to give you 2 items for the backpack. Like, so one that's, maybe emotional or metaphorical. What else would you put in the backpack for success?
Resilience. Yeah. I get pretty cold, pretty wet, pretty uncomfortable, but it's worth it.
This is just world class, astounding. Thank you so much for everything you did to bring this together. This is so shenanigans, like just so much interesting stuff people can absorb. I mean, the 2 books, so important because you do the Aquanaut for the children. You've got, books for the grown-ups. You have lots of like how-to books as well, not just which is, the important body work. But you can how do you do underwater photography is just as important because you want more people communicating. So very much appreciate it. I will say the closest my grandparents ever got was they would take us to Reed State Park up in Maine, where it was very rocky until you got out into the water. And then the water was so cold. It was about 6 degrees Celsius. So, probably your warmest water, judging by some of the places you've ended up. But upon going there, they always said the same thing to me when we were lucky enough to be there.
Debbie's at WrestleMania.